Hello, this is Nathan Radcliffe, and I am talking to you today to give you my tips on how to have a successful virtual interview. And I'm an ophthalmologist. My experience is ophthalmology. So I'm going to speak mostly to other ophthalmologists, but I think some of the advice here will be helpful for anyone. So that said, I'm going to start by saying, this is a virtual interview, and one thing you should do is just go to YouTube and Google how to set up my computer and room for a virtual presentation. There's certain principles, like you want to be centered on the screen, you want your head to be, at least up towards the top of the screen, sort of like mine is. You want good lighting and you want good audio. For example, there's Bon Jovi playing in the background here. Don't want that for your interview, so you want to get in a nice quiet place. Google that, look about it, but don't handicap yourself by starting off your interview with poor lighting, a backlit room and bad audio. Just doesn't make sense. You've worked too hard to do that to yourself. So getting to the interview itself, the first thing that I want to tell you is that if you're getting an interview somewhere, you should feel confident that your academic credentials, your academic performance, your achievements from a numbers standpoint are sufficient to get a spot in that residency. I don't think they would interview somebody and then ultimately just reject them because their numbers weren't high enough. Now, you still got to fight to get the highest ranking you can get, but the point I'm making is that you're in the interview to share with the team your wonderful personality. And you're there to show them that you are what? Someone they want to work with day in, day out. Show them you're not annoying. Show them you're not confrontational, no red flags in terms of your personality. You're really made it, a good part of the way, and you just need to convince these people that they're going to have fun working with you and that you'll be a good team member, a good team player, and someone who's going to help them foster a great educational environment that's supportive for everyone. So in many ways, relax during the interview. Try to show yourself, your personality, and let them in. And so one of the things I wanted to say is that you are actually going to be generating the interview questions with your application. And so when you go through your application and you're filling it out, keep in mind that, if you write something down, that's going to be the basis for the interview, because your interviewers are going to have your application in their hand. So if you want to get a question about fly fishing, put it in as your interest or hobby. And in fact, if you have put fly fishing in as your interest or hobby, have a good story about it. Go ahead and just prepare that ahead of time. It's coming up, so make it a funny story, rehearse it. You're in control here. You're controlling the content, and then ultimately, you're going to get to give them a story. That said, there's going to be a lot of things on your application that you maybe haven't thought about in a while, like your research. Now, maybe you've been doing research for 10 years and there's an old paper that's listed first chronologically on your list of papers that you've published you haven't thought about for 10 years. Reread it before interview season. Just try to remember what the basics are, because that's one place, you don't want to sound like you don't understand your own research, but if it's been a long time, that could happen. I'd also say that anything you put in your personal statement is going to be fair game for an interview to ask you questions. So, if you mention, hey, I first became interested in ophthalmology when, my grandfather had retinitis pigmentosa, you should anticipate that you're going to be in front of some genetic retina specialist who is going to want to know which mutation that RP patient had, and they're going to want to hear what you know about it because you brought it up. So you can take advantage of it, but make sure you know the things that you're talking about in your application. One more tip that I'll give you, particularly if you did a number of clinical rotations, is make sure that you can present an ophthalmology patient really well. Make sure you have a good case ready to present. Because, one of the things we would do that would really tell us a lot about how good the candidates were would just say, hey, tell us about someone that was interesting to you that you saw in one of your rotations. And some residents would present, well, this was a 55-year-old man who presented with 4 days of duration of gradual vision loss, painless loss, and a red, irritated, whatever. Versus someone saying, I saw a case of retinoblastoma that was really neat. It's not a presentation. So we learned a lot about who was really organized and who had been paying attention during their rotations based on how people presented a case. So again, my advice, pick a patient you saw, look their chart up, get to know them really well, maybe research a little bit of the literature so you can say, you know, interestingly, this patient was a candidate for a novel therapy and, you know, we wanted to, you know, to set the patient up with that treatment. That's an opportunity for you. You know, those are sort of the big things that I think you can do to prepare for an excellent virtual interview. There's a couple more. You know, remember that the people you're interviewing with are your friends and your peers, and that you may end up in a career with the people you're interviewing with on interview day. They're your friends. You're not competing with them. You can help each other. And I think it goes a long way if you do try to help them. I think they may help you. I know that in one of my interviews, I went ahead and told them I think they should match my buddy for the program because he loves it. He rotated there. He had great things to say about them. And, you know, I said, look, he should be your number one pick. I think he's an amazing guy. I worked with him in my med school and I like him a lot. So he likes your program. I think you guys would be a good fit. Now, are they really going to take my advice and rank him number one? No, but at least they say, hey, Nate's a nice guy and he's willing to help out a friend. Maybe we'll rank Nate a little higher. And they actually did match my friend. I was happy for him. And so, you know, just you're going to be friends with all the people you're interviewing with for many, many years after residency interviews are over. And then finally, towards the end of your interview, at about this part in the process, the program may look at you and say, do you have any questions for us? And what I'm here to tell you is that do not ask them a question that you want to know the answer to, okay? It's another chance to demonstrate your keen intellect, your nice personality, and all the wonderful things that you can bring to the table. And so what I would recommend you do when they ask you a question is ask them a question that shows that you have studied their program, that you've learned something about it, and that you want to know more, but that it's a real question for the program. And I would say just avoid any harsh questions. You know, so like here's a question you don't want to ask. I noticed you just lost your residency program director due to a scandal, and you know, I'm wondering how is your program going to get through the next few years without a strong residency program director? Okay, I mean that's antagonistic. It's reminding them of something painful. Ultimately, it's not going to make anyone in that room happy. Find the answer to that question in some other venue. I would recommend your question be something more along the lines of, you know, I talked to a lot of your current residents right now, and they're all excited about the virtual surgical lab. You know, they have been telling me that it's helped them learn how to do a capsulorhexis and learn how to do cataract surgery. I have an interest in pediatric ophthalmology. Do you think that I'd be able to use the virtual lab with some pediatric ophthalmologists to, you know, better get prepared for the operating room, you know, when I'm a resident at your program? Something that shows that you've been talking to people, have an interest in the program, you've been reading what's on their website. I mean, they put all that info on the website just for you. So it's very gratifying to them to see that someone's reading it and you're their target. So, well, those are my thoughts for how to have a successful residency interview and with a nod towards ophthalmology, but hopefully something there for everyone. I hope you see that ultimately you're in more control of the process than you might have thought, that you can sort of plant seeds for the interview that will lead to success, but that like anything else you do in your career, thinking ahead, being prepared, being organized, being positive, and showing that you're a team player are going to be the keys to success in the interview and beyond. All right, thanks for listening.